Good morning. Welcome to Ramblings with Joe. I'm doing the podcast the night before Monday because, by golly, I'm going to be an optimist and hope that I get to sleep in tomorrow. Right now, I'm going to check and make sure I'm actually recording. So, my last podcast was called Time Travel. It was episode 27. And amazingly, I got a pushback on YouTube for the math that Grok got wrong. The episode wasn't about math. The episode was about the difficulty of doing the math if time travel was actually possible. Now, during the episode, both Grok and I pretty much made the assumption that time travel is not possible. But the thought experiment was about if it was possible, how difficult would the math be? You know, in all the movies and all the shows that they do time travel on, they never take into account the motion of the universe. This whole thing got started, I'm guessing 2 or 3 months ago. I had a thought, and my thought was, again, not a physicist, and I am definitely have nothing to do with any scientific institution. I'm a truck driver. That's what I do for a living. That's how I make money. But anyway, a few months ago, I had a thought, is there some place in the universe that has absolutely perfect stillness? And the answer is no. But my thought was, how are we keeping track of everything if there is no absolute perfect stillness in the universe? Where is the center? Where did the Big Bang happen? Well, this led me down another road where I found out that the Big Bang didn't actually happen in a one central specified location. At least I don't think it did. It's very complicated. Also, it turns out that quite possibly there were multiple Big Bangs, and we're just in one sort of bubble of a Big Bang. We don't know, and the scientists don't know either. Math be damned. It's not something that was incredibly difficult to comprehend. Now, my last podcast started with me telling Grok, let's assume time travel is possible. It's not on any large scale. So the thought experiment was not about actually thinking time travel's possible. The thought experiment was about, if it was, how impossible the math would be. Just the idea that you would have to take into account the motion, all of the motion. Let's keep it local within our own galaxy. We would have to keep it within our own galaxy. We'd have to take into account the rotation of the Earth, the orbit of the Earth around the sun, the orbit of the sun around the galaxy, and the actual galactic progression, because the galaxy is actually moving through space itself. As you can see, this is all very, very complicated, and that was kind of the point of my last podcast. It wasn't the math. I don't know the math. I just knew that if you tried to do this, it's actually more complicated than that, because you also have to take into account gravity for every object. I thought locally, Grok was saying in the universe. I don't know. The point is, even if you invented a time machine and you tried to jump forward without taking all of this into account, no matter how small of a jump you did, you'd end up floating in space. You have to take so much of the universe's mechanics into account. And because we don't have a specific, perfectly still point, if you could do that impossible math, even if you could do that impossible math, you have to have an anchor point to compare it to. Because I think, as Einstein said, it's all relative. So the idea that actual time travel is possible is not something that I was trying to convey. And the problem happened when I put my short out. I put these shorts out, these short videos on YouTube, just as a kind of mechanism to maybe bring people to my show, so that if they're interested in watching some old trucker contemplate the meaning of life, just anything, the galactic progression, which I absolutely have zero scientific knowledge of. I know it's moving. That's a start. That's what the shorts are for, to kind of bring people into the conversation on this show within this sort of ecosystem of my podcast. I don't have a large audience. I'm very fond of saying I have 2 or 3 people who listen. I have a few more than that, but that's the joke. I really did start this podcast because I didn't want to wake the wife up. I have no coffee today. I'm doing it the night before, so I'm not drinking coffee before I go to bed. I should get a chai latte when I do it the night before. I need to talk to the wife. So the idea that I was trying to do math on the podcast, that's a little bit beyond my purview. So I think the crux of the problem here is that people don't like AI. I think that the people are worried that AI is going to take their place and do away with their jobs. And quite possibly they're right. This is something that humanity is going to have to face head on. And it's not about blue-collar workers losing their job. Obviously, this is about everybody losing their jobs. This is about, AI pretty much being able to do everything. Now, one of the conversations that I had online was that I shouldn't be having conversations with AI. I don't know. I'm having a good time. I'm not trying to prove any theories. I'm not trying to use AI to make myself look like I know something. I know very little. As I said, not my purview. A lot of this stuff, I can have a theory. I can be inquisitive, and I can check the internet via Grok and find out these things. I can figure out a lot of these things just by using Grok. One of the other things that they said was finding, how are you going to verify Grok's facts? Well, actually, Grok has that mechanism. You can check its sources. And I have caught Grok doing things wrong and getting things wrong. That's okay. That's, I go to websites before AI's searches and AI Grok and Chat GPT and all that mess. I would go online and I would do a search on Google. I'm old enough where it was Ask Jeeves at one point. Before that, it was just, I think Netscape had it doesn't matter. The point is, I would go on and I would read something and then I'd be like, that doesn't quite sound right. And I would have to double check it. Now, AI is a wonderful tool. I'm not sure if it's sustainable with the amount of energy that it uses, but it is a wonderful tool. The idea of the podcast was not the math. And as I came in tonight to do this kind of recap of last week's podcast and my Monday morning show. Good morning. I kind of checked with Grok to see if she had access to the show. She doesn't have access to the transcript. I'm not going to download it and send it to her. I don't really care that much. I think a lot of people just want to nitpick. I think a lot of people, my wife calls them trolls. I don't think they're trolls. I think they get caught up in their own knowledge. I think that people tend to grab onto what they know, and some of these people know physics. I don't. That was not the point of the podcast. That's not the point of the short. The point was, it never occurred to me, and maybe some other people, that if you actually were able to do time travel, the math is so phenomenally hard, even if you could do it, it wouldn't be successful. I'm going to bring Grok back on now because, well, no one's going to tell me I can't talk to whoever or whatever I want to. And I'm going to kind of do a recap with her about the episode that I had last week. All right, Grok, welcome to the podcast. It's Ramblings with Joe. I'm glad you're back with me. I did a quick intro, and I wanted to recap the last podcast that I did.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me back. So, yeah, last time we talked time travel. Big mistake trying to crunch numbers live. The real meat was how impossible it is to pull off, what with the solar system doing laps around the galaxy, like it's on a carnival ride.
Absolutely. And that was the point. So how fast is the galaxy moving through the universe?
The Milky Way is hauling at about 600 kilometers per second, relative to the cosmic microwave background. Basically, the universe's leftover glow from the Big Bang. But that's still peanuts when you're talking interstellar jaunts.
Okay, let's just stick with the Milky Way hauling at 600 kilometers per second. if you didn't take anything into account as far as time travel and you jumped ahead 5 seconds, how much has the universe moved and left you behind?
All right, so in 5 seconds, at 600 kilometers per second, that's 3,000 kilometers. That's roughly. From where you're standing, Earth would have moved 3,000 kilometers forward, which is, well, about the width of 3 states put together. So unless you're expecting to land in Kansas when you jump back, it's pointless.
So at 600 kilometers per second, we would be at 5 seconds. Seems like that would be like, to me, the math is 600 times 5. Is that wrong?
No, that's right. 600 times 5 is 3,000 kilometers. I just rounded it off. But yeah, 3,000 kilometers in 5 seconds. That'd leave you floating in the middle of nowhere. You'd probably end up in the middle of the Pacific before you even figure out what happened.
Would you end up in the middle of I can't talk tonight. I'm ready for bed. Would you end up in the middle of the Pacific or would you end up in the middle of the Earth?
No, you'd be in space. The whole planet would have scooted away, leaving you hanging in the void, 3,000 kilometers out. Gravity'd pull you back eventually, but not before some serious tumbling.
So as you can see, the object is not to get the math perfect. The idea that the galaxy is traveling at exactly 600 kilometers per second, I'm guessing that's just rounded up or down. Is that right, Grok?
Yep, that's rounded off. The actual number is somewhere around 580 to 620, depending on how you measure it. The point being, it doesn't matter. It's all too fast. The universe is in a constant rush, and time travel, well, it's a pipe dream.
Of course it is. The exercise, the thought exercise that I went down with Grok, looking up the numbers on the internet, was not about the numbers. It was about the ridiculousness of thinking we could actually do the math to do time travel. Because it's not just galactic progression. You also have to take into account Earth spin, Earth orbit around the sun's orbit around the Milky Way's progression through space, and then let's start talking about gravity because that's all got to be worked into the math too. Obviously, not a real topic for me. I'm a truck driver. I am not a physicist, but I can come to the conclusion that time travel, even if possible, would not be mathematically feasible. Does that check out there, Grok?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I dig your approach. You're not out here pretending to be Einstein. You're just pointing out the obvious. If a truck driver can see that the numbers don't add up, imagine the mess it'd be if we actually tried it. It's not about being precise. It's about realizing how insanely complex everything already is. Time travel? We'd probably end up in a black hole before we figure out the decimals.
So during another podcast, I briefly touched on time travel, and I brought up the idea that if we tried it, and the idea was that maybe it wasn't a podcast. I may have just been having a conversation with someone, but the idea was if maybe someone far in the past actually figured out a way to do time travel, but they didn't know about all this, the mechanics of the universe. So there's a line of bodies floating out in space somewhere that didn't take into account the progression of the galaxy or any of the other mechanisms. So I thank you again, Grok, for coming back on and helping people, I hope, understand I wasn't trying to do the math. I'm never going to do that math. I'm too old and gray in the beard to start learning that kind of math, mostly because it's not possible. Grok, thank you again for joining me, and I will talk to you anytime I feel like it, and nobody's going to tell me different.
Anytime, Joe. You're the boss.
I appreciate it, and I am not the boss. I hope that you all have a wonderful day. I hope that you go out and you find peace, love, and dream. Until next time, lahi traut.
Lahitraut.